The ball bounced once, then twice under a golden afternoon sky in a quiet neighborhood called Willow Bend Grove. A boy named Jaden 13 wore a faded Steph Curry jersey and a grin that came easy. His mom was inside baking cornbread, humming something soft, and for a moment life just felt normal. The world was still kind until it wasn't. A police cruiser rolled up slow like it didn't belong, but decided to anyway. The officer stepped out, white guy, mid-30s, name tag, reading Reed. He didn't smile. He didn't ask. He just yelled, "Drop the weapon." Jaden froze, clutching his basketball like he'd suddenly forgotten how hands worked. "Sir," he stammered, "this is my house." Reed crouched, one knee down, gun out, fingers shaking just enough to show he wasn't used to being challenged. "I said drop it." The ball slipped and hit the grass with a dull thud. Inside his mom, Judge Dana Lawson heard the tone before the words, the sharpness that mothers of black sons learn to recognize like smoke before fire. She stepped outside, barefoot, tea towel in one hand, calm as steel, cooling in water. Reed's gun swung slightly toward her. "Ma'am, stay back," he barked. Dana didn't. She walked down the porch steps, slow, every movement deliberate. "You're pointing a loaded weapon," she said evenly, at a child in his own yard. Reed's face flickered with confusion, but training kept him rigid. She reached into her cardigan pocket, slow enough to narrate every inch. "I am not reaching for a weapon," she said, and pulled out a black case. When she flipped it open, the badge caught the sunlight, Federal Judge, U.S. District Court. The moment stretched thin. "You just committed an unlawful use of force in front of a federal judge," she told him. Reed blinked, gun lowering by inches. I got a call. Suspicious activity." Dana's eyes narrowed. "A child playing basketball. Phones came out. Neighbors peeked from blinds." Jaden's voice trembled. "Mom, I didn't do anything." She didn't take her eyes off Reed. "You saw skin, not a child," she said, voice like a verdict. And in that moment, the power shifted, not loud, just definite. Reed stepped back. The sound of his holster snapping closed was the first apology he'd ever give. That night, Jaden couldn't eat. His hands shook too much. Dana called someone she hadn't in years, her old friend Marcus, an investigative journalist who once made a mayor resign. "A cop pointed a gun at my son," she said. "You want me quiet or loud?" he asked. "Loud," she said. "Very loud." By morning, the clip was everywhere. Backyard, not battlefield. The story of a boy, a basketball, and a badge. Some said it was bravery. Others called it politics. Reed was placed on administrative leave, which in plain English meant he got to sleep fine while her son still flinched at shadows. Dana didn't stop. She dug through public records, found 3 prior complaints on Reed, all labeled unsubstantiated. That word made her laugh out loud. "Unsubstantiated," she muttered. "Like ghosts don't count unless they leave fingerprints." The deeper she went, the uglier it got. Supervisors covering for him. Reports rewritten, body cam footage lost. Then came the backlash. Anonymous letters, tires slashed, a brick through her window with a note taped on, "Stop before you're next." The local news ran soft segments about a community divided, but she didn't hide. She kept showing up to court, to Jaden's school, to her front lawn when they drove by slow. "They're afraid," she told her son, "of what happens when silence has a lawyer." The real storm hit when she testified before Congress. She stood there in her judge's robe, not behind the bench, but in front of it, saying, "My son was holding a basketball. That's not a threat, it's a childhood." The cameras clicked. The country listened. And when Officer Reed was called to testify, sweating under the lights, she asked, "Does race influence how you assess threat?" He hesitated too long and finally said, "Of course it does. That's reality." You could hear the air leave the room. The clip lasted 39 seconds. By sunset, it had been shared 1,000,000 times. Reed was indicted. The Justice Department finally said the words they'd avoided for years: civil rights violation. For some, that was justice. For Dana, it was just paperwork. She still had a son waking up from nightmares. Weeks later, Jaden started drawing again. The first picture was him, small, arms raised, facing a man with no face and a badge instead. He titled it, The Boy and the Gun. The second drawing came after the verdict. This time he stood taller, basketball at his side, his mom behind him holding a book labeled Law. Underneath he wrote, We're still here. Dana started a group with other mothers, Latina, white, black, all with stories that sounded too similar to be coincidence. They called it Yard Line. Their rule was simple. We don't scream, we record. They built a website, mapped every incident, every complaint. Within weeks, thousands of pins dotted the screen like freckles on America's face. Each one a name, a story, a truth too long ignored. Jaden came up with the next idea, a photo exhibit called Children Shouldn't Be Targets. Just kids being kids, laughing, playing, living. The local library gave them a wall. On opening night, a line wrapped around the block. One photo showed a little girl blowing bubbles on her front porch. The caption read, She deserves to grow up. A week later, Dana got a letter from a fourth grader named Emma. I used to think police were always right. Now I think the law is supposed to protect people like me. Thank you. Dana read it twice, then pinned it next to Jaden's drawing. It was the first time in months she smiled without forcing it. When the verdict finally came guilty on all counts, she didn't cheer. She just closed her eyes and whispered, About time. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited for a statement. She gave them none. She drove straight to the cemetery to her father's grave. The man who once told her, You can't outrun a system, you have to outteach it. She knelt, brushed the dirt from his name, and said, I'm trying. Now Judge Lawson teaches a course called Bias Within Law and Accountability from the Inside Out. It's not mandatory yet, but her classroom is always full. Some students come curious, others guilty, a few brave enough to change. She starts every session the same way: justice isn't blind. It's just been looking in the wrong direction. At home, Jaden still draws, still plays ball, though sometimes he glances at the street first. His laughter's coming back slow but real. And when people online argue whether his mom's a hero or a troublemaker, she doesn't bother replying. She knows the truth, she's both. Because sometimes you don't win by shouting louder. You win by standing still long enough for the world to see you, to really see you. So tell me, if it were your child in that yard, would you have stayed quiet? Or would you have stepped forward, badge or not? Leave your answer below. And if you believe a backyard should never be treated like a battlefield, hit that like button, subscribe, and share the story. Because silence has ruled long enough.